It's that time of the week again when we have Stephanie Dobson join us. Stephanie is a lawyer, mediator, and online educator with Hagen Divorce Law and Mediation. She has offices in Edmonton and Lloydminster. Stephanie, thanks for joining me today.
Nice to see you as always, Stacey.
We are talking separation agreements today. So the first thing I want to know is, why would you need one of these if you're going through a divorce or separation?
So a separation agreement, let's first start with what is a separation agreement. So the separation agreement is a document that sets out the agreements that you and your spouse have reached with respect to any post-separation topics after negotiations have concluded. So it's not a way to start the negotiations, but it's a way to end the negotiations. We can either, people might be familiar with court orders. So a court order is sort of often instead of a separation agreement. So you can either do court order or a separation agreement. So usually that separation agreement is signed by both parties, so both separating parties, and it's also often signed by a lawyer.
So what kind of topics would be in this agreement?
So usually there's a number of topics. So first, I like to say there's what we call a parenting plan. So a parenting plan consists of parenting scheduling, it consists of decision-making responsibilities, and sometimes it can even contain a communication plan if the communication is difficult between the two of you. It also contains issues with respect to finances. So there's child support if there's kids involved, and that's, of course, the financial support for the children. And then there's spousal support on the other hand, which would be support for one of the spouses post-separation. And then the last topic that's in there is what's called division of your property, so division of assets and debts. So there's division of the big items like a house, a vehicle, a bank account, a business, and some of your debts. And it's also with respect to how to divide your household contents. So at the end of that division of property, people may be familiar with the term settlement payment or equalization payment. So it usually also will set out what that payment is that is paid from one spouse to the other to cause the division of property to be balanced between the two parties.
So why would separating spouses need this agreement?
So you can imagine the topics that I just mentioned, you need to set out the terms of all of those things in that separation agreement. So you might want to set out your co-parenting arrangements, and the level of detail that we go into in a separation agreement usually is reflective of the level of conflict between the parents. So we're trying to prevent conflict going forward is part of the reason for that separation agreement. We also want to finalize the arrangements with respect to untying the knot. I call it untying the knot. Between parties. So we call it sort of a little bit of a line in the sand so that going forward, things like your property, so your assets and debts, if you want to purchase a home, you don't usually want your former spouse to be able to get a portion of the equity that you've accumulated in that new home that you're purchasing. Sometimes a separation agreement is needed for third parties, like a bank or another lender. So if you're separating, the lenders will have it on their checklist that they cannot lend to you until they have a copy of your separation agreement. That's often something that people will go to the bank and they'll say, well, I guess I need a separation agreement, so they call the lawyer.
Well, let's take that topic a little bit further, Stephanie. So why would lenders actually need this agreement?
So here's what the lenders need to know. And these are the topics that will be covered in your separation agreement. The first topic is your income and expenses with respect to the separation. So in that separation agreement, you might have support obligations. So this will factor into your ongoing expenses to determine whether you qualify for the loan at all, or the extent to which you qualify for a loan. And the second part on the flip side of that is what kind of support will you be receiving? So there's some types of loans that will factor in child and spousal support into your income to determine whether you qualify for the loan. Now, on the property side, the assets and debts side, the question for the lenders is what assets and debts will you be retaining so that they can figure out what your net worth is. You may have filled out a net worth statement for any kind of loan that you acquire. And that's the same thing, is they want to know what you'll be keeping, because sometimes there's assets that are in your name currently, but based on the separation agreement, like something like a house, for example, you might be staying on the house and the other person coming off, or you might be coming off the house and looking to buy a new home. And so the lender needs to know that whether your name is going to stay on that asset or come off of that asset. Now, here's my tip of the day. Even though the lenders will need the signed separation agreement in order to qualify you for the loan, I certainly recommend that you take a draft separation agreement to the lender to at least start that qualification process, because there's no point in you agreeing to take over the family home, for example, if you're not sure whether you're going to actually qualify for that.
If you decide you need a separation agreement, how do you get started?
So with the families that I serve, I always start out with an initial consultation. So call into a law office or a mediation office and ask them what their initial setup is for the intake of new clients. So the first thing is the initial consultation. Then after that, we need the negotiations to start. So we've talked before about how the heck do you negotiate a separation agreement, or how do you negotiate a separation and divorce? You can negotiate it yourselves, just the two parties. You can use mediation, you can use collaborative divorce, or you can go to court. So the separation agreement itself is the result of those agreements being reached between the parties once everything has been concluded.
All right, Stephanie, well, thank you so much for joining me once again, and we'll be back to chat again next week.
Nice to see you, Stacey.